Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Paranormal News. Tonight's article comes from CollectiveEvolution.com, and the headline is Existence of Extraterrestrial Space Vehicles of Enormous Size and Power is a Fact. Ex-NASA Scientist. It was published March 19, 2019, and it was written by Arjun Walia. The facts. Ex-NASA and Lockheed scientist Ames Research Norman Berggren writes a number of startling facts in his book titled Ringmakers of Saturn. One of them is the reality of humongous-sized extraterrestrial vehicles near Saturn. Reflect on hundreds, if not thousands, of credible testimony is available suggesting that we are not alone, and that some of these UFOs are indeed piloted by extraterrestrial beings. What are the implications of this? When it comes to credible sources for the existence of UFOs, there is no shortage. The evidence for the existence of UFOs is overwhelming, to say the least. Whether it's credible witness testimonies from thousands of high-ranking military personnel, academics, scientists, astronauts, and politicians, or the millions of pages of UFO files published by dozens of governments, or platforms like Tom DeLonge's To the Stars, that has former high-ranking intelligence agency officials on their team. UFO disclosure within the mainstream world is occurring in many different ways. That being said, it's always been occurring, and it's a sad reality that mainstream media and establishment mouthpieces like CNN and the New York Times have to give attention to something in order for it to gain credibility. Mainstream media has always been used as a tool to program the minds of the masses and influence their perception for ulterior motives, typically to best suit their owner's interest. Isn't that the truth? A great example would be the War on Terror. Now, authoritative figures like the government are actively censoring information, deeming certain outlets that address controversial issues as fake news, simply because it threatens corporate, political, and elitist agendas. Even mainstream media journalists themselves have been blowing the whistle that these outlets are completely run by intelligence agencies, government agencies, and powerful corporations. Are you really that surprised? There are also declassified documents showing the influence intelligence agencies have over not just mainstream media, but academia as well. You can access those documents and read more about it here as well as here. And it gives two links. Why is the above paragraph relevant to the topic of UFOs? Because this field has a long history of infiltration and disinformation. Given mainstream media's track record of spreading misinformation and hiding the truth, it's not easy to trust anything that comes from these sources, including any information that comes out regarding UFOs. That being said, mainstream UFO disclosure so far seems to involve no deception, as they simply continue to push the fact that these objects are real and have steered away, so far, from any type of false interpretation. UFOs are no longer taboo, but the extraterrestrial hypothesis as a possible explanation for their existence still seems to be. Prior to all of the official witness testimonies, electro-optical data, video footage, and pictures being released proving the existence of UFOs. Claiming the existence of these craft was also taboo. When it comes to the idea that some of these crafts are extraterrestrial in origin, there is no shortage of verified credible sources. One of them is Dr. Berggren, who had a long career with Ames Research Laboratory, NACA, the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, Lockheed Missiles and Space Company, and NASA. In his book, Ringmakers of Saturn, he states multiple times that extraterrestrial vehicles 100% exist. On page 89, for example, he states, "Existence of extraterrestrial space vehicles of enormous size and power is a fact, the significance of which is difficult to grasp, let alone assess. Departing now from the tedious fact development process, this chapter stands back and takes a philosophical look at the findings." In his book, Norman provides pictures taken from Voyager 1 and 2 flybys of Saturn to illustrate this. Luminous sources at Saturn have been observed, notably by Herschel, Knight, and Ainsley. In one instance, a fiery source moved suddenly away from the A-ring outer edge. In another unrelated instance, a bright elongated source, pursuing a straight line course, entered the A-ring outer edge. After these dramatic events, luminous sources did not become a specific subject of inquiry, as might be expected. That is, until this analysis many years later. Another great quote from the book, found on page 49, is evidence is 100% positive that propulsive vehicles generate the inner and outer inky A rings of Saturn. The presence of these units is made fortuitously clear in plates 5 through 8. The picture below is from the book. You can see the size of the vehicles, and they are all approximately the same size as planet Earth, although some are larger. Quite mind-altering, isn't it? And this is the photograph they're referring to from the book. The pictures NASA got back from the Voyager mission to Saturn in 1980 were apparently so mind-altering that they locked them up. At least that's what retired U.S. Army Command Sergeant Major Bob Dean said in this lecture. He also showed numerous photographs from the Apollo missions that were never released to the public. You can view some of those photographs here. Dean was a good friend of Berggren and mentioned that Norman had to go through some trouble to get his book published. Below you will see another picture of a luminous source provided in Berggren's book from the Voyager missions, hovering just outside one of Saturn's rings. I circled it in red. This one is also approximately the size of our planet. According to Berggren, there are several large crafts proliferating out around Saturn and its moons. And this is the photograph, and inside that red circle right there is the large luminous source, which apparently they're claiming is a very large craft. Norman published this book in 1986, and more than 2 decades later, he gave a rare interview with Project Camelot's Carrie Cassidy. In that interview, he spoke of stories and pictures he'd seen about UFOs, and how these pictures are highly classified. Not only in his book does he show luminous sources within our atmosphere, but he speaks of flying saucers being photographed within Earth's atmosphere as well. When Carrie asked him directly about extraterrestrial beings, he stated, "If you want to know about people, kind of thing, there is the ship that picked up the Voyager capsule at Alameda Naval Shipyard, and they have a picture there of, I think it's the Apollo flight that Buzz and Neil were on. But anyway, there's one image there that shows black people getting off." He described them as very tall, stating that 7 feet would be a conservative estimate. You can listen to and watch that full interview here. I'd like to leave you with this clip from the Thrive documentary. It's one of my favorites, and I've shared it in several of my articles for many years, so I apologize if you've already come across it. And this here is the interview that he's talking about. I'm not going to play the interview or click any of the links or anything. If you want to, go onto this article here on collectiveevolution.com, and you can see those for yourself. I don't play those kind of things because a lot of that stuff is copywritten, and it'll give me strikes on my channel. The implications of this information are huge, and perhaps that's why they've been hidden from humanity. But are they really hidden? The truth is indeed out there for those who look. That being said, the implications of this type of disclosure also threaten various industries. What if governments get their hands on UFO technology? What discoveries and developments could come from that? What about the energy industry? This topic relates to every aspect of the human experience, and I believe it's simply one stage in the progression of humanity that we have to and will eventually go through, inevitably becoming a spacefaring race ourselves. We are still in our infancy as a race, and throughout history there have always been paradigm-shifting realizations and events. At the same time, I believe humanity is living in a very special time. a prophesized time, and a very spiritual time. And I believe the extraterrestrial presence has something to do with that in some way, shape, or form. That's not to say this is an entirely benevolent phenomenon, but that's another discussion. And that is the end of this article. So this was an interesting one. I like the picture of the rings of Saturn with that anomaly there they've circled that they're claiming is a large craft. It's kind of cool. It's interesting how they talked about the mainstream media basically being propaganda. I believe that as well. That's very, very obvious to anybody who pays any kind of attention. And as far as the whole thing about governments eventually finding one of these things and using the technology, that has already happened. 100% that's already happened. I know that we have done that. America has done that. We got a lot of technology from the Roswell crash, and there was a whole little division in the Pentagon that was responsible for reverse engineering that technology. So that's definitely been done by us, and I imagine probably been done by other countries as well. So anyway, that's the end of that article. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments what you thought of it, and I will catch you on the next one. Until I speak to you again, love many, trust few, and do harm to none. God loves you, and so do I. Bye-bye.